Is the Mississippi House of Representatives Speaker Philip Gunn. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Paul. Good morning. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me today.
Look, thank you. And I know it was a long day yesterday, and it was a long night last night. We were talking about it, and you experienced the same thing I did and many others, and I'm sure you folks who were in the heat of the battle, as you were so hyped up after this happened. What time did you get to bed?
Last night around 11 o'clock probably, and it's been that way for about 3 or 4 nights in a row. But as you and I were talking, it wasn't the going to bed part; it was the staying asleep part.
Yeah.
I wake up at 3 or 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I just so much adrenaline and tension in the air or going through my body. I guess I just can't. Hadn't been able to sleep much, but hopefully we'll be done with this session in a couple of days and things will return to normal.
We're living, and you've been a big part of this, living history that will be written in Mississippi history books, and we've experienced firsthand. And it's hard to grasp how far we've come in the amount of time that this thing turned around.
Yes, sir. You're right. And we are living in a moment of history here, and I even get a little bit emotional listening to that tape you just played right there, listening to how it unfolded. To be in that chamber the last 2 days, see the emotion that unfolded on the faces of a lot of people, and knowing that we are crafting history here, that this has put Mississippi in a better position to move forward, to reach our full potential. We have enough obstacles to overcome in our state. We don't need any others that are unnecessary. And this was a way that we could position ourselves, rebrand ourselves, if you want to say that, create an image that's positive Mississippi. And I think we look better in the eyes of the world today.
If you're not in the political arena, or if you're not in the business segment of this, and I'm talking about it in the municipalities and the counties and certainly on the state government level, you're going to work day by day, and you're working on the farm, or you're working in the factory, or you're working in your business office, and you're not out there trying to recruit, you're not a part of the Chamber of Commerce or in that segment. I don't think anybody understands how debilitating that has been. And you get people say, well, we got this factory, and so it must not be a problem. You talk to anybody in economics in this state or a Chamber of Commerce, and it has been a problem, and a growing problem. And after the George Floyd situation, it was as cancerous, as toxic as ever, and it was not going to go down.
I think it reached a peak, and I think that was I don't know if that was a driving force, but it certainly brought the issue to the forefront once again. I don't know if you saw the ad that many business leaders put in the newspapers across the state this week or not. I think it was Wednesday maybe, where over almost 100 economic developers and business leaders and CEOs around the state put an ad, full-page ad, in various papers, making that very point that you just made.
Were there some changes at the last minute there from some people, or do you think they went into this, you knew who were and who were not going to vote?
Changes on votes,
on votes, yeah.
Sure. I think, and keep in mind, we've got a lot going on at the Capitol. A lot of people have been dealing with their own responsibilities, doing the budget, trying to get their general bills handled, and so a lot of people have been focused on a lot of different things. But I think you had a lot of people who gave great thought and consideration to this, who 4 days ago may not have been planning to vote for this change. And many of them came on board within the last 2 or 3 days, and I commend them for the courage to do that.
I know, thinking about this, one of the things that kind of kept me awake, I think the template is, the default is to kind of get angry at the people who voted against this. And then after I thought about it for a while, I understand they did what they had to do. And I think in some of them even said, look, if I had not promised my constituents that I was going to vote this way, I would have voted for it. And you can have that discussion later on. But regardless of that, we did it, and I mentioned this on the air earlier, the people in Mississippi did it the right way. We did it with a lot of gentleman dialogue. Nobody hollered, nobody screamed. And anybody in the nation looking at how we came to this decision, they've got to be impressed.
Well, and that's an excellent point, and one I would really like to highlight. There was a lot of discussion on both sides of the issue, but people were very respectful of one another. There was no anger. People, in my conversations, expressed their views. They were respectful of other people's views. And when we see a world outside of Mississippi where they've got all these protests going on and you've got people yelling and screaming at one another and attacking the cops, praise God, we haven't had that here in our state. People have been very respectful of one another. Yesterday, before the vote, outside the front of the Capitol, there were two groups of people standing within 20 feet of one another, some carrying the current state flag, and there was one with a Black Lives Matter banner. And I watched them for a little while, and they actually carried on a conversation with one another. One from one group, one in the flag group, walked over to the Black Lives person, shook their hand, introduced themselves, and they were respectful of one another. They both stood out there and voiced their views, and that's what Mississippians are able to do. And the important part, Paul, is that we can do that just like we did in the House of Representatives this week, and then we can come back together and move forward. And that's the main thing. I know people voted the way they had to on this issue, but now is the time to come back together. Now, it is over. It is done. We now need to move forward, come back together, and let's push forward and make Mississippi reach its full potential. And I think this was hindering us from reaching our full potential, and now we can move forward and do that.
I would think even with them, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, from those people when the election were held to, and that was kind of the litmus test. You going to vote for the flag? Oh, no. If you vote for that flag, I won't vote for you again. And I think even some of those people probably in the last 2 weeks, a week and a half, 2 weeks, their views have changed to the point where, okay, if you do vote for it, I can understand. Sure.
It's just a lot of things have unfolded to change the circumstance, to change the environment, Paul. And you recognize that from last November or August. We've seen so many things happen around this country that it just changed the situation, and now it is the time to change that flag.
The Senate gavel's in at 9 o'clock. The House gavel's in at 10 o'clock. We got more What's Next with the Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn, in just a moment.
Senator Horn.
It has been said that a politician thinks about the next election. A statesman thinks about the next generation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of those moments.
Senator Jordan.
This is a glorious day because we have a potential to do what is right and what is just for all 3 million of us. So let's move and get it done now. Now is the time. Thank you.
Will you call the roll, please?
Voting yes or yay. Barnett, Blackman, Blackwell, Blunt, Boyd, Bryan, Butler, Carter, DeBar, Delano, Doty, England, Frazier, Harkins, Hobson, Horn, Jackson of the 15th, Jackson of the 11th, Jackson of the 32nd, Johnson, Jordan, Kirby, McMahon, Michelle, Moran, Norwood, Parker, Hope, Simmons of the 12th, Simmons of the 13th, Suber, Thomas, Thompson, Turner, Ford, Wiggins, Witherspoon, Younger. Voting no or nay. Brannon, Kaufman, Chazanall, Chisholm, Fillingane, Hill, McCon, McDaniel, McClendon, Seymour, Sojourner, Sparks, Tate, and Whaley.
By a vote of 37 to 14, the bill passes.
There we go. That was the Senate, and John Horn will be in coming up at 8:37 this morning. So it does give you kind of chills to understand that that was part of history. What do we do now as far as the bill itself? You okay? Kind of hard, isn't it? John made an eloquent... John made a beautiful speech there, and all right, Perez, maybe you need to take this. Well, you march on, sir, and we'll join you in a couple of minutes there. So,
I apologize.
Seriously, I understand. The the committee now will be formed, and how fast? Take us through there.
I apologize. It's just very emotional to listen to those tapes, both sides of the hall, knowing the struggle that it took to get there. To have been a part of that and to be a part of history is very emotional for me, and it's been a long struggle to get there.
You had
I've been
some African American members of the Black Caucus who came up to you and talked to you afterwards.
Yeah, they were all very much appreciative, and
you saw it in their eyes,
and
too.
they understood that this was an issue that was going to require a change of heart on the part of a lot of people. And this is very difficult. What's difficult about this, I guess, is that it is a matter of the heart, and when people are emotionally involved, there is but one person who can change hearts, and it's not me. And it's not that you can reason and argue and try to put forth logic, but if somebody's heart is not changed, then you're just fighting an uphill battle. But what we had here over the last 2 weeks are people whose hearts moved, and they recognized this is the right thing to do. This is where we are at this point in time. It is now time to move forward for the betterment of our state, and that's the bottom line. This is for the betterment overall. You can talk about the economics, Paul. We can talk about the sports leagues. You can talk about the history and all of that, but the bottom line is, and I said this to many of my members, we are elected to be here for the health and betterment of the state of Mississippi. And the question arises, what puts us on that trajectory? And a new image is what does that. And many people embraced that and said, yes, now is the time. And I think Horn said it well. Politicians worry about the next election, and statesmen worry about the next generation. And I think a lot of people finally embraced that and came on board, and we got it done.
There were so many extraneous parts to this. One of them was the inset was a Confederate flag. That was just irony, because it couldn't happen worse for us, because the Confederate flag itself, outside the Mississippi flag, identified us with that flag, rightfully so, since it was the inset. And that flag was only used in horrendous ways and showed up on every time something happens. It showed up, whether it was in a killing, it was in a racial confrontation, whatever it happened to be, and through no fault of our own, to be honest with you.
That's correct. That is correct.
And that's kind of an odd situation that we don't factor into this whole equation, but it couldn't be worse for a state that didn't need that type of publicity.
And it wasn't going to change.
No, it's worse.
And that's another thing. People need to realize we're not going back there. For example, NASCAR came out and decided this emblem does not represent the things that they stand for. Now, 3 weeks from now, they're not going to change their mind and say, oh, we've changed our mind. We think we're going to use it again. The Marine Corps is not going to start using it again. People are not going to go back to where we were, and that's just a reality. It's nobody's fault. We're not angry at anybody, but this emblem has been co-opted by people who intend to use it to represent things that don't define Mississippians. We are not racist. We are not hatred, people filled with hatred. And unfortunately, there are people who have taken it and used it for that emblem. And I use the swastika. Everybody uses that as an example, but I asked an individual this week, I said, what do you think about the swastika? Well, it's horrible. Why? Because the Nazis used it. It represents hatred. And I said, you're exactly right, but look at the history of it. Go back. It was the Aztecs or the Chinese or somebody back in the 1400s.
Native Americans,
somebody that had it as a sign for enlightenment or something. Mm-hmm. It meant something good way back when. And they took it, and as I understand it, I'm no history expert, but they flipped it around and used it, and now it represents it's just the sight of it. Everybody knows it's bad, and that's where we were headed with this. And to continue the delay And it was not the fault of any Mississippian that I can tell. I don't know of any Mississippian that did that. But the reality of it is that it now is being used for illicit purposes, and we did not, as a state, need to be associated with that anymore.
Take us through the game plan for to make true on the new once the governor signs it, this new law as far as our resolution. It's actually a statute, isn't it?
Well, yes, sir, it is. After the 2001 vote, just to give you a little history here, in 1894, our legislature adopted the current flag. In 1906, the legislature rewrote the laws of Mississippi. And the first thing you do when you rewrite the laws is to declare all the old laws invalid. So it got caught up in that. When in 1906, when they rewrote the code, the Mississippi Code, it didn't get put in there. So we really had no official flag. And in 2001, that's when it was decided we need to declare what our official flag is. That was the vote, and now it's been put into the Mississippi Code. I don't remember the code section. I think it's 3-3-16 maybe. So what will happen once the governor signs the bill, which he said he would do, the bill repeals that code section. Basically, by that we mean it is now declared to no longer be the official flag. We had many who were concerned about the dignified removal of that, and I respect that. I noticed when South Carolina took theirs down, they had a ceremony of sorts. We have appointed the Department of Archives and History to come up with what that looks like. So they will, by July 15, figure out a way to take down the current flag in a respectful, dignified manner. Obviously, it will be taken, I'm sure, over to the History Museum, or the Department of Archives will decide what to do with it. And it is a part of our history, and it's not something we need to ignore. And it will be whatever they decide how to display it will move forward. So then the commission will be formed. The bill provides that a commission of 9 people, 3 appointed by the governor, 3 by the lieutenant governor, 3 by the speaker, will set out to come up with a new design. They will have to do that by September the 14th. That new design will then be put on the ballot in November for confirmation, if you will, by the voters. They will get an up or down vote on the new design. And if they adopt that new design, then that becomes the flag. If they vote it down, then the commission will be put back to work to come up with another one.
So are you okay with the way that's written?
Yes, sir. Well, I wrote it, so yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. But
in essence, it could take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 14 elections to get that done.
It could, but
right. I want to ask you about a lot of other things.
Yeah,
Can you hang on?
Yeah.
The legislature is still in sessions. It hasn't gone on recess yet till October. We'll talk about that. What's the timeline? What else is left to be done? What's the budget look like? All that with the Speaker of the House coming up next. So anyway, anything else you want to mention here? We'll do it a little bit later on.
Yes.
All right. We'll get to that later on, back with the Speaker of the House. I do want to talk about this, though, because people don't realize how close this vote was in the Senate. And because you had to have a 2/3, my information earlier was it was only 2 or 3 votes, but it may have been closer than that.
I was not counting votes in the Senate. I can only tell you what I was told. We were in communications with them, but yes, they were 2/3, I think, in the Senate. Let me clarify. It depends on how many people are there. So it's 2/3 of whoever's there. Right. So that number can move. If you got all 52 people there, I think that number's 35. If you've only got 50 people there, then it drops. But they were shooting for that 35 number. As late as yesterday morning, Saturday morning, they were still trying to shore up their number and make sure that they had it. And that's why we didn't move on it first thing Saturday morning. We convened.
They needed more time.
Well, we convened at 10 o'clock, and I was trying to find out. I told them, I said, we don't mind going first. We don't mind taking the hard vote first. We'll step out there, and we'll do it. But we don't want to do it if it's just going to go down to your end of the building and fail. We don't want to lose anything here. So I was trying to get some sort of confirmation that they had their votes, and about 12 o'clock Saturday is when they notified us that we think we've got the votes. I said, then we'll proceed. So that was the backstory of what was going on down there. And so they had to have 35, and I think they posted exactly 36. So they only had one vote to spare down there. Well, I guess 2. If they'd lost 2, then they wouldn't have had their number. In the House, we had a little bit more of a cushion. I think we had 5 votes beyond what we needed.
Not to underestimate, we talked about the vote yesterday being so historic. Really, the vote on Saturday was incredibly important, too, because it was 2/3. That was tough.
Oh, that was the big vote.
Yeah, that was
the big vote because you had to post 2/3.
Could never have gotten to Sunday.
And the reason is because the deadline for this type of bill had passed. As we've discussed many times before, you have deadlines we have to operate under. The deadline for passing a general bill was in February. So in order to – and let me clarify this. People say we changed the rules. We didn't follow the rules. That is not accurate. You suspend the rules. You could 2/3 vote. You can do anything up there. The rules just provide for the introduction of a bill. With a 2/3 vote, you can do that. It's not crooked and it's not backdoor deal. That's just the way the legislature operates, and it's within the rules. And everything we did was within the rules because the rules specifically say with a 2/3 vote you can suspend the rules, and that's what we were achieving. Once you got that 2/3, you clearly had the majority, and so we were well beyond that. Yes, the Saturday vote was the historic. Both were historic. I don't mean to say that. The Saturday vote was the critical, bigger challenge, maybe that's the way of putting it, than the one yesterday. The one yesterday actually changed the flag. The one on Saturday allowed us the opportunity to do that.
Did that fall under the banner of it could have been held on a motion to reconsider?
Yes, sir.
So
and could be amended as well.
And could be amended.
Right.
And nobody did that.
On Saturday, yes, there was an attempt to amend the resolution. That failed. I don't recall another amendment on our end.
You're talking about in the House.
In the House, correct, on Saturday. The resolution to allow for the introduction of the bill. Now, yesterday we did we had one amendment, but it was soundly defeated. In the Senate, they did have an amendment yesterday that they had to vote on. But yeah, it could be amended, and
nobody did. And I was holding my breath and thinking, let's don't do this. Let's don't drag this out. So I'm sure you guys were thinking the same thing.
That's right.
Let's talk about when you guys are going to be finished. You go back today. You're in at 10 o'clock. The Senate's in at 9 o'clock. How much other business needs to be taken care of?
Well, the budget, which is the big item. Hopefully we will have that done today. Now, tomorrow's June 30th. We got to get it done by then because the new fiscal year starts on Wednesday. So these agencies need their money by tomorrow so they don't have to suspend business. But today I think we will finish the budget. We also have to spend the CARES Act money, and there have been a lot of negotiations continuing.
Where are you on that?
Well, I think we're working it out. I think I've been involved with this other a lot, and I know we've been discussing with the Senate how we want to spend those CARES Act dollars, different areas of need, and then the general bills. We still have just the regular, normal legislation.
Not a lot of time here.
No, it's not. And I've told my members that the general bill, we're not going to hang around to do the general bills. They have until the two big items left to do are the budget and spending the CARES Act dollars.
If you take care of, within the time allotted before the new fiscal year starts, if you take care of just the appropriation part, can you go over and do other things later?
Yes, sir.
So you could actually go on July the 2nd or 3rd.
We could.
After the holidays.
The resolution that we passed before the pandemic hit allows us, I think it extended the session on paper till July 10th or 12th or something like that.
A little concerned about, because if you guys have got to acquiesce as far as House and Senate, because there's not a lot of time for conferencing on this, if the bills are different as far as the care money and any dispute there.
That's correct. The big ticket item right now is the budget. We got to get that done today.
Why isn't that just more of a placeholder and level funding, because you got to come back when the numbers are better viewable?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Why isn't it just level funding from last year as far as the budget is concerned per agency? Because you got to come back a little bit later on when you get a better look at how much damage has been done from this pandemic.
Yes. Well, we implemented based on our revenue numbers and the projections by our economists and what we call the revenue estimating group. There's 5 people who sit in a room and try to predict the future and tell us how much money we're going to have. It's kind of like the weatherman, you know.
You put together Miss Cleo and an economist, and that's a heck of a human being.
So as they look into their crystal ball, they tell us how much money we're not going to have next year. And the budget that we're doing, we're going to get out of 20 fine, I think. Fiscal year 20, we're going to get out of fine. But with 21, we're going to be down a little bit. So the budget that we're passing has a maximum of a 5% cut. Some agencies are different. Some are not cut for various reasons. Some experience a 2 or 3% cut, but most of them are experiencing a 5% cut.
Have you seen the June numbers since this is the 29th?
They get a report about 5 days out from the end of the month. So, yes, there was a report that came out
Is it
Thursday
as bad as we thought it was going to be, or do you know?
No, it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be. I was going to say we're going to get out of 20, I think, in good shape, or at least it's not as bad a shape as we thought. And then, of course, we got to do the 21 budget, which is really what we're working on.
Is there anything else we're missing here as far as what we have to get done in the state legislature this year? That, as far as October is concerned, when you come back in October, it's going to be looking at the appropriation for the most part.
Well, the reason we've extended the session, and let me be clear, it's not costing the taxpayers any money at all. We've talked about this before. The only cost is when we actually bang the gavel and convene. Just extending it on paper doesn't cost them any money. The CARES Act money is the only reason we can come back. And so what we've done is try to adjust as we give ourselves that opportunity to come back till October the 5th to address any emergencies that may arise, any needs, any shifting of those CARES Act dollars that may happen.
Those dollars can be spent now. We don't have to wait till October.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's going to be our effort, is to try to project right now where those monies need to go. Yeah. And but we don't know what the future holds. So an easy example is the colleges and universities. They have no idea what their enrollment is going to be come September 1st. It could be up, it could be down. Yeah. They're anticipating it's going to be down. They may need dollars to help get through that, and we won't know that. We won't even have that information until then. So by coming back in October, we can adjust as we need to. And then, of course, the regular session starts back in January.
Was the story the state legislature is removing $360,000 in earmarks for a chain of private schools founded by a woman at the center of the massive welfare? That would be the Nancy New. $360,000 that comes out of that. In the way you look at it, Richard Bennett said, who chairs the House Education Committee, said that's coming out. That's for sure. Any other monies going to be shifted around as far as private schools?
Some of the CARES Act dollars, I think, are available to the private schools. Well, of course, we're spending the CARES Act money on private businesses, and we can spend it on private universities. We can spend it on private schools. Those people are taxpayers, too. They've suffered damage as well, and it is certainly allowed under the CARES Act.
Well, let me say this. Congratulations and kudos on your leadership.
Thank you, sir.
Because it was a heck of a weekend.
Well, I know you've been an advocate for that as well, and I appreciate your support and your vocal support for this new development.
Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn, we have news coming up after this next break, and then Scott Waller joins us along with John McKay. We'll talk about the economic impact of this.